Elliot's world shattered at 17 when his father's fist slammed the door shut behind him. "You're no son of mine." The words echoed, sharp as broken glass, as he stumbled into the cold Virginia night with nothing but a backpack and a bruised heart. By 22, he was still running. From the pain, from the past, from himself. Richmond's streets buzzed with life as Elliot pedaled through the city, his delivery bike rattling under the weight of pizza boxes. The scent of melted cheese clung to his worn jacket, a badge of his new reality. 5 years ago, he'd been a high school kid with dreams of college. Now, he was a ghost in his own life, dodging memories of a family that had disowned him for loving who he loved. His mother's tearful silence had hurt more than his father's rage. Each delivery drop-off was a reminder, keep moving, don't look back. Tonight, the city pulsed with autumn energy, crisp air, neon signs, and the hum of Friday night crowds. Elliot's phone buzzed with his next order, a large pepperoni to a gallery in the Arts District. He pedaled harder, weaving through traffic, the ache in his legs a distraction from the one in his chest. The gallery, a chic brick building with glowing windows, stood out against the gritty street. He parked his bike, grabbed the pizza, and pushed through the glass doors. Inside, the air was warm, alive with laughter and clinking glasses. Paintings lined the walls, bold, colorful abstracts that seemed to pulse with emotion. Elliot scanned the room for the customer, a guy named Marcus, according to the order. His eyes landed on a man in his mid-20s, standing by a canvas splashed with reds and golds. Marcus was striking, tall, with a warm brown complexion, his locks tied back, and paint stains on his jeans. His smile, bright and unguarded, hit Elliot like a punch he hadn't braced for. "You the pizza guy?" Marcus called, his voice smooth, carrying over the crowd. Elliot nodded, suddenly aware of his own disheveled appearance, sweaty brow, faded hoodie. He handed over the box, their fingers brushing for a split second. Marcus's eyes lingered, curious, like he saw something Elliot didn't. "Keep the change," Marcus said, slipping a 20 into Elliot's hand. Their gazes locked, and for a moment, the gallery's noise faded. Elliot felt exposed, like Marcus could see the cracks in his armor. The years of rejection, the nights spent couch surfing, the loneliness he buried under late shifts. He mumbled a thanks and turned to leave, but Marcus's voice stopped him. "Hey, you ever been to one of these? Art openings, I mean." Marcus gestured to the room, his smile easy but intentional. Elliot hesitated. "Not really my scene." He glanced at the paintings, their colors pulling at something deep inside him, something he hadn't let himself feel in years. "Stick around," Marcus said, his tone light, but with a spark of challenge. "Might surprise you." Elliot's instinct was to bolt. Deliveries didn't wait, and neither did his need to keep moving. But something in Marcus's eyes, warm and steady, made him pause. He shoved his hands in his pockets, glancing at the door, then back at Marcus. "Maybe next time," he said, the words feeling like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Outside, the night air hit him like a slap. He climbed onto his bike. Marcus's smile burned into his mind. For the first time in years, Elliot felt a flicker of something dangerous, hope. He pedaled into the dark, unaware that this delivery was the first step toward a collision with his past and a chance to reclaim his future. The next week passed in a blur of deliveries, but Marcus's gallery lingered in Elliot's thoughts. He found himself biking past it on his routes, stealing glances at the glowing windows. On a rainy Tuesday, his phone buzzed with another order to the same address. His heart kicked up a notch. When he arrived, Marcus was there, leaning against the counter, sketching in a notebook. The gallery was quieter tonight, the air thick with the scent of paint and coffee. "You again," Marcus said, grinning as he took the pizza. "You're making me look forward to takeout." Elliot ducked his head, a shy smile breaking through. Just doing my job. Marcus raised an eyebrow, setting the pizza down. You're more than your job, man. What's your deal? You from around here? The question caught Elliot off guard. He wasn't used to people asking about him, not the real him. Yeah, born and raised, he said, keeping it vague. You? Philly, originally. Came here for the art scene. Marcus nodded at a painting on the wall, a swirl of blues and purples that seemed to capture a storm. That's mine. What do you think? Elliot studied it, the colors stirring something raw in him. Grief, maybe, or longing. It's intense, he said finally. Like it's got a story. Marcus's eyes lit up. That's what I'm going for. Stories. Feelings. You got a story, pizza guy? Elliot tensed, the weight of his past pressing down. Not one worth telling, he muttered, turning to leave. Hey, hold up. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. I'm having a show here Friday. You should come. No delivery required. Elliot wanted to say no, to keep his walls up, but Marcus's sincerity was disarming. I'll think about it, he said, already knowing he'd be there. Friday night, Elliot stood outside the gallery, his bike locked to a pole. He'd swapped his delivery jacket for a clean flannel, his nerves buzzing. The gallery was packed, the crowd a mix of hipsters, artists, and locals. Marcus spotted him immediately, weaving through the crowd with a grin that made Elliot's chest tighten. You came, Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. Let me show you around. As Marcus led him through the gallery, talking passionately about his work, Elliot felt something shift. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. Marcus saw him, not the delivery guy, not the kid thrown out for being gay, but Elliot, the person he'd almost forgotten how to be. They stopped by a painting of a figure standing at a crossroads, painted in shades of dusk. This one's about choices, Marcus said, his voice low. About finding your way when the world tries to tell you who you are. Elliot's throat tightened. He wanted to tell Marcus everything. About his father's rejection, his mother's silence, the years of scraping by. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he said, I get that. Marcus looked at him, his eyes searching. You ever feel like you're stuck at that crossroads? Elliot nodded, his voice barely a whisper. All the time. The night stretched on, and Elliot stayed longer than he planned, caught up in Marcus's world of color and stories. When the crowd thinned, Marcus handed him a sketch, a quick, rough drawing of a bike under a streetlight. For you, he said. Something to remember tonight by. Elliot took it, his fingers trembling. As he biked home through the quiet streets, the sketch tucked safely in his bag, he felt a spark he hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, he could stop running. Elliot's apartment was a cramped studio above a laundromat, the hum of dryers a constant soundtrack to his sleepless nights. The sketch from Marcus sat on his makeshift desk, a reminder of the gallery night that had cracked open something inside him. He traced the pencil lines, the bike under the streetlight, and felt a pull toward something he couldn't name. Days turned into weeks, and Elliot found himself at the gallery more often, drawn by Marcus's easy laugh and the way he seemed to see through Elliot's guarded exterior. They talked over pizza boxes, Marcus sharing stories of his art school days in Philly, Elliot offering fragments of his own life. Careful, curated pieces that skirted the raw truth. Marcus never pushed, but his questions lingered, gentle invitations to open up. One chilly November evening, Marcus invited Elliot to his studio, a loft space above the gallery cluttered with canvases and paint tubes. The air smelled of turpentine and possibility. Marcus was working on a new piece, a vibrant mural of a city skyline at dawn. This one's about new beginnings, he said, dipping his brush into gold paint. What do you think of when you hear that? Elliot leaned against the table, watching Marcus work. Starting over, he said quietly, leaving the past behind. Marcus glanced at him, his brush pausing. You can't leave it all behind. Some of it's worth carrying. Elliot's chest tightened. He wanted to tell Marcus about the night he was kicked out, the way his father's voice still echoed in his nightmares. But instead, he He picked up a spare brush, hesitant. "Can I try?" Marcus grinned, handing him a canvas. "Go for it. No rules, just feel." Elliot dipped the brush in blue, his hand shaking as he made a tentative stroke. The color spread, bold and messy, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was creating something instead of just surviving. Marcus watched, his presence steady, grounding. When their hands brushed as Marcus adjusted the canvas, Elliot didn't pull away. Their connection grew, a slow burn of late-night talks and shared sketches. Marcus taught Elliot to see the world through an artist's eyes. Every crack in the sidewalk, every flicker of a streetlight held a story. But Elliot's past was a shadow he couldn't outrun. One night, as they sat on the studio's fire escape, the city sprawling below, Marcus asked, "What's holding you back, Elliot? There's something you're not saying." Elliot stared at the skyline, his breath visible in the cold air. "My family," he said finally, the words heavy. "They didn't want me. Not after I told them who I am." Marcus's face softened, but he didn't look away. "That's their loss," he said firmly. "Not your fault." Elliot's eyes burned, but he blinked back the tears. Marcus reached for his hand, their fingers interlocking, and for a moment, the weight of the past felt lighter. They sat in silence, the city's hum filling the space between them, and Elliot wondered if he could ever be whole again. But the past wasn't done with him. A week later, while delivering to a suburban neighborhood, Elliot froze outside a house that looked too familiar. White siding, red shutters, the oak tree he used to climb. His parents' house. He hadn't been back since that night 5 years ago. The order was for a large Hawaiian, his father's favorite. His hands shook as he rang the bell. The door opened, and there was his mother, older now, her eyes widening. "Elliot." Her voice was a whisper, laced with shock and something else, regret, maybe. He thrust the pizza box forward, avoiding her gaze. "Delivery," he said, his voice flat. She reached out, her hand trembling, but he stepped back, the old wounds tearing open. He turned and walked away, her voice calling after him, but he didn't stop. Not until he was back on his bike, pedaling hard, the tears blurring his vision. That night, he showed up at Marcus's studio, his emotions raw. Marcus didn't ask questions, just pulled him into a hug. "You're enough," Marcus whispered, and Elliot clung to him, the words sinking into the cracks of his broken heart. Elliot's encounter with his mother left him unraveling. He threw himself into work, taking extra shifts to drown out the memories her face had stirred. But Marcus was a constant, a lighthouse in the storm. Their evenings in the studio became a refuge, where Elliot could paint, talk, or just sit in silence. Marcus's presence a balm to his wounds. One night, Marcus suggested they collaborate on a piece for an upcoming community art show. "Something real," Marcus said, his eyes bright with purpose. "Something that tells your story." Elliot hesitated. His story was messy, painful, not the kind of thing people hung on walls. But Marcus's belief in him was infectious. They started sketching, their ideas blending. Elliot's sharp, angular lines meeting Marcus's fluid curves. The canvas took shape, a figure breaking free from chains, surrounded by a city that glowed with possibility. Working together brought them closer, their touches lingering, their laughter filling the studio. One night, as they finished a late session, Marcus leaned in, his breath warm against Elliot's cheek. "I'm falling for you," he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. Elliot's heart raced. He'd never let himself feel this deeply, not since the rejection that had defined him. But Marcus was different, safe, real. He kissed Marcus, tentative at first, then with a hunger that surprised them both. The studio, with its chaos of paint and canvas, became their world, a place where Elliot could finally breathe. But the art show loomed, and with it, the fear of exposing his truth to strangers. The night of the show, the gallery was packed, the air electric with anticipation. Their piece hung in the center, drawing whispers and nods. Elliot stood by it, his nerves fraying, Marcus's hand brushing his for courage. A woman approached, her face familiar yet older, his mother. She stood before the painting, her eyes tracing the chains, the figure, the city. "This is you," she said, her voice breaking. "Isn't it?" Elliot froze, his heart pounding. Marcus stepped closer, a silent shield. "Yeah," Elliot said, his voice barely audible. "It's me." She reached out, but he flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears spilling. "I was wrong. We were wrong." The words hit like a tidal wave, stirring anger, grief, hope. He wanted to scream, to forgive, to run. Instead, he stood there, Marcus's hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "I need time," he said finally, the words a lifeline. She nodded, stepping back, and Elliot felt the weight of her apology, heavy but not enough. Not yet. The art show changed everything. Elliot's painting, raw and unapologetic, became the talk of Richmond's art scene. Local blogs praised its emotional depth, and Marcus's gallery buzzed with new visitors. But for Elliot, the real shift was internal. His mother's apology lingered, a crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. He and Marcus grew inseparable, their relationship a delicate dance of trust and vulnerability. Marcus shared his own struggles, growing up Black and queer in Philly, fighting for his place in a world that often pushed back. Their shared wounds wove them closer, but Elliot still grappled with his past. Could he forgive his family? Did he even want to? One afternoon, a letter arrived at his apartment, forwarded from an old address. His mother's handwriting. He left it unopened for days, afraid of what it might say. When he finally read it, her words poured out. Regret, love, a plea to talk. She'd left his father, she wrote, unable to live with his hate any longer. She wanted to make things right. Elliot's first instinct was to burn the letter, but Marcus, ever steady, urged him to consider it. "You don't owe her anything," he said, "but you deserve closure." They met at a quiet cafe, Elliot's nerves raw. His mother looked smaller, her eyes heavy with guilt. She spoke of her silence, her fear, her regret. "I should have fought for you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll spend my life making it up to you, if you'll let me." Elliot listened, his emotions a tangle of pain and hope. He didn't forgive her, not fully, but he agreed to keep talking. It was a start, fragile but real. Meanwhile, Marcus's career soared, and he asked Elliot to join him in a new project, a community mural celebrating Richmond's diverse voices. Elliot poured himself into it, painting alongside Marcus, their brushes telling stories of resilience and love. The mural became a beacon, drawing crowds to the arts district, and Elliot felt a pride he'd never known. But his father's shadow loomed. Word reached Elliot that his father was sick, alone, his pride a cold companion. Part of Elliot wanted to let him rot, but another part, the part Marcus had helped him find, wondered if confronting him could finally set him free. Elliot stood outside his father's house, the same red shutters staring back like unblinking eyes. Marcus waited in the car, his presence a quiet strength. Elliot hadn't planned to come here, but the mural's unveiling was tomorrow, and he needed to face this final piece of his past. He knocked, his heart pounding. His father answered, frail and gray, a shadow of the man who'd thrown him out. "Elliot," he said, his voice a rasp. No anger, just surprise. They sat in the living room, the silence heavy. Elliot spoke first, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "You broke me," he said, "but I built myself back up. I'm here to tell you I'm not your shame. I'm proud of who I am." His father's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. Elliot didn't need him to. He'd said what he came to say. As he left, the door closing behind him, he felt lighter, like he'd shed a weight he'd carried for years. The mural unveiling was a triumph. Hundreds gathered, their faces reflecting the colors of Marcus and Elliot's work, a vibrant tapestry of faces, stories, and hope. Elliot stood beside Marcus, their hands clasped, as the crowd cheered. His mother was there, her smile tentative but warm. They were still rebuilding, but it was a start. Elliot no longer delivered pizzas. He'd enrolled in community college, studying art, his future unfolding like a canvas. Marcus was his partner in every sense, their love a quiet rebellion against a world that had tried to break them both. As the crowd dispersed, Elliot looked at the mural, at the figure he'd painted, a man stepping out of the shadows into the light. It was him, but it was also everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. He'd been thrown out, but he'd found his way back, not to his family's house, but to himself.